Wake up, everyone. We take Morning Brew on the road for a special episode as I sit down with my stepfather, Andy, while we discuss our thoughts on The Last Full Measure, a recent film about the Medal of Honor recipient William H. Pitsenbarger, and his act of valor in which he tragically lost his life in Vietnam. Andy was there as a fellow PJ to Pitsenbarger and their partner, Harry O'Byrne. We discuss his experiences during the Air Force in Pararescue, all the way to being a California Highway Patrol in San Francisco. There isn't enough time for all his stories, as there are too many, such as the time Andy was hit on by Rock Hudson, but maybe I'll get another chance to sit down with him later for those ones. As for now, Buzzsprout, the easiest way to begin your podcast. Sign up with Buzzsprout through the link in our show notes and get a $20 Amazon gift card after your second month. Using the equipment that you already have and a quiet space, upload to Buzzsprout and your episodes are available everywhere podcasts are found. Apple, Google, Pandora, Spotify, and more. Instacart. Hundreds of grocers now at the ready to hand select items of your choosing. It's super easy. Use the app or head over to instacart.com to check them out. Ready to order? Follow the link in our show notes and let them know we sent you. Essential items, office supplies, groceries, and even contactless delivery. Instacart has you covered. And today is sponsored by Rosie Cooks Gourmet Catering, located in the greater wine country of Northern California. Rosie Cooks was built off the passion for the culinary arts and is shared throughout the staff. From weddings to corporate events, gourmet packaged boxed lunches, wine pairings, and private events. The team at RC collectively challenge one another and deliver mouth-watering menus every time. Check them out at www.roseyycooks.com on Facebook and Instagram. ROSEYCOOKS. And finally, Newness Productions for all your film and photography needs, from social media, promos, and commercials. Wedding films and photography, newnessproductions.com. NEWNESS Productions.com. Now, let's just get on.
Does anybody have any idea about who or what this
Tell
is?
them about the Twinkie.
What about the Twinkie?
Who you calling butthead? Butthead.
Y'all talking about? Y'all talking about me?
You take drugs, Danny? Every day.
This is ridiculous. It's crazy. I feel like I'm babysitting, except I'm not getting
I've
paid.
heard police work is dangerous.
It is. That's why I carry a big gun.
Aren't you afraid it might go off accidentally?
I used to have that
What
problem.
did you do about it?
I just think about baseball.
Declare.
Whose children is this?
Zed's.
Who's Zed?
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
I gotta go to college. Danny, this isn't Russia.
For a disaster of biblical
What he
proportion.
means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff. Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
Dead rising from the grave. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
Okay, Charlie, straight ahead. Taking out the slack, hold the hover, hold the hover, hold the hover, slack down, survivor's coming up.
Thank you, Andy, for coming on. All good. So what about your unbiased, or let's go with
Unfiltered?
your unbiased opinion of Last Full Measure. What was, like, if you had to go in not being a PJ watching the film?
The hard thing is that I knew all the players and I knew the story. And so when I first saw it, it was totally, I couldn't really even decipher it. I saw a whole bunch of fragments. It's almost like I was watching each frame of the movie, instead of the whole movie.
What do you mean, like each frame?
I didn't go in, when I first saw it, I didn't go in, I didn't watch a movie. Basically, everything that happened, I was breaking it down as an individual event instead of the whole continuity of the movie. Because when I walked out of the movie, I had no idea whether the movie was any good or not. It just...
Yeah, so was it like balls accurate? How close visually, how accurate was it?
Pretty visual. I mean, it was pretty accurate. The thing you have to remember is most of the rescues and everything that we did in there were nothing like that. They were basically Nobody was going in, shooting away in and out. It was, and that's why, Pitts got the medal, because what he did was pretty amazing, considering that he volunteered for it. And the fact that the Army deemed it too risky and too dangerous for them to go in and protect their own guys. And so that's...
So your biased opinion?
My what?
Your biased opinion then on the film?
Overall, I think it was pretty dead on for what they were trying to convey, the message. It really wasn't a war movie. It was more a political movie about probably one of the most political wars that we've ever been involved in.
Yeah. William Hurt played who?
Yeah, he... If you want to start at the beginning of the movie, my partner in the Air Force was Harry O'Byrne. And typically in our unit, you would have a partner that you would do everything with, because we knew each other, and whatever the situation was, we pretty much knew what your buddy was going to do. And that's why they like to keep the continuity between teams. But Harry... he was one of the first guys that I met when I first got in the Air Force after going through training. And he kind of was our liaison to our rescue squadron in Japan. And so we worked together. And William Hurt, well, what happened was after this Pitsenbarger incident in Abilene, they put Pitts in for the Air Force Cross. And they thought that it should be upgraded to the Medal of Honor. And it was basically denied, and it went back down to the Air Force Cross. But Harry was the lead guy on getting that thing done. As you can see from the movie, he just kept going and going and going. It took, 30 years of, talking to people and trying to get this thing upgraded. But Harry... William Hurt played a combination of Harry and one other PJ.
See, I thought it was two people. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, it was a combination. But it came across in the movie pretty accurate, because they had to go out and they had to talk to all the regular Army guys.
Who was the other dude that he played?
Yeah, it'll come to me. I don't remember right now, but it'll come to me.
So those two basically were the lead, like that spearheaded getting the Medal of Honor?
Yeah, because Harry, in the movie, when after Pitts got killed, and the next day the Air Force went in to basically pick up Pitts, Harry was the one that went down, and he went to the Army guys that were there and says, "Hey, where's the Air Force guy?" And that's when they said I, didn't make it, and that was Harry. And
so when you guys would go in, you said you were in crews, right? And Harry was a crew with Pitts.
Yeah.
So did you have two pilots and then two?
Well, here's what we really had. The only thing that was not accurate in the movie, the only thing was the helicopter that they were using for it, because we were using these HH-43 Cayman helicopters, which were really not designed for what we were using for. These little things.
Is that?
Yeah,
that's it?
That's it.
Okay.
And in this, you have two pilots, you have a PJ, and you got a flight engineer.
And the flight engineer's job is to...
He works the hoist. He, takes care of everything in the back of the airplane. He, if there's a mechanical issue or something, he's able to take care of it.
Kind of the middleman between ground and...
Yeah. And the helicopter they were using had no range. It had no payload. And so what happened in the movie is that they used a Huey, which is, you know, the typical Army helicopter.
Which are these guys, right?
Which are those, yeah.
Okay.
And those things had a tremendous payload. But we didn't have those. We had these little ones.
Now, when you said they didn't have the range.
Yeah.
Now, were these the ones that you were talking about? You have to literally carry gas cans with you?
They have, yeah.
In these ones?
We have in those, yeah. Not all the time. It depends on where we were going, you know, into.
What's the range on them?
It depends on a number of things, but probably not more than about 250 miles.
And then these ones are about?
Well, they're a lot more. I don't know exactly what the ranges are, but with these, so what happened with this is they were on call, and you have two helicopters that go in. You have a low bird and a high bird, and Pitts was on the low bird, and Harry was on the high bird, and so Pitts went in. He went down because the Army guys couldn't work the litters, and their medic had gotten killed. So Pitts went down and did all the things that he was supposed to do, which was you kind of got an idea of in the movie. But then when it was time, then they were taking fire the whole time, and when it was time. It got really hot on the ground, you know, with the intense fire. And so Pitts had to make a decision whether he got back in the helicopter or a wounded Army guy did. Mm-hmm. And the reason he had to make the decision was they couldn't carry both. He had to make the decision, do I go and get saved, or do I save this guy? He made that decision. And that was the only thing that was a little inaccurate about the movie, is that the helicopter, because it was the same thing. Basically, Pitts waved him off, but it was
told him to take this guy instead.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's the same thing basically, but for sort of different reasons.
Which was really interesting to me because I felt, and I don't want to this is just me being critical, and this is again my biased opinion because I know you, and I have a background of what you did a little, you know, I have a little taste for it and what PJs are about, but so others may live like that. I was just talking to Mom, and I was saying Pitts was kind of that beacon for the PJs. Like that was literally what they stood for.
Sure.
It seems like to me, at least, and I felt like that should have been highlighted just a little bit more. And that's just, again, my biased opinion, because I felt like PJs it's just so unique, such a unique group of dudes that did what you guys did.
Yeah.
And, God, you guys were pushed through early, right? To be PJs?
Through what?
You guys were pushed through early, right? Through training. And now, like, the training that you had, it obviously evolved to something more extensive.
Yeah. Well, it's basically the same training, but takes longer for them to do it now. We have the urgency of getting it done, getting through it, and getting over to Vietnam. But the things that have really changed more than anything is the equipment, because the equipment these guys have now is just phenomenal.
Well, that was the only real criticism I had of it, truly, just because I was like, God, they could have highlighted more about the PJs and them themselves, and maybe what it was like to lose that brother, and what it was like to hear that back at where. Now, where were you guys stationed? Because when they would go up, obviously you would be elsewhere, right? Or you would be taking a break, or how did that work?
Well, they had different locations where they would have rescue units based on where the firefight was, and we were basically there not to necessarily help any Army guys. We were there to protect the fighter pilots and the pilots that went in. And one of the reasons that pilots do all these crazy things is that they know that if they get shot down or get engine problems or something and they have to go down, that everything will be done to bring them back, everything. And so typically when they'd be on a raid, the pilots will go up and they would have a location they were going to bomb, or they're going to support the Army, or whatever they're going to do. We would be in the air in case something bad happened. And so it depends on where we were. It could, we had a unit in Da Nang. There was one actually in Thailand. And we weren't even supposed to be in Thailand at that time. But we were flying out of Thailand into Laos and Cambodia, because there was actually a lot of action there as well.
Really?
Yeah. And they called it the Secret War.
Why?
And, well, Air America, I don't know if you know anything about Air America, but Air America is kind of a CIA operation where in Thailand, at Nakhon Phanom, Air America used to fly out of there on secret missions, and they would do insurgency things. And so whenever Air America was up in the air, the rescue units would go and they would find a place to station themselves in the air in case anything happened.
Interesting. And you weren't there, right?
I what?
You weren't there, right?
I was. I was at Nakhon Phanom. Yeah, but like I say, it was a secret war, and we really weren't supposed to be there. And it was right on the river. Having a brain fade, but
what I did like, so we'll go back to Pitts.
Yeah.
What I really did like though, and and again, this is biased because I know from you, just from you, I felt like the dude that played Pitts got the characterization or his character right, because I could see a lot of stuff, like when that dude had his when the other guy had his leg split open and he's bandaging him up and he's telling him, you're gonna have a really neat scar, to tell your buddies, he's just calming him down and he's in the fight, but he's kind of that, all right, what are we doing here, let's get everything on straight. And I was like, wow, yeah, it really kind of spoke to me, because it was like, yeah, it's kind of you. And that's how other people describe PJs too. Is kind of that, or what are we doing? We're working together. We're,
that's probably, why there's so few of them, because there's only about 350, I think, in the Air Force today. And they're looking for certain, things. It was a lot easier when I was going in, but now they're looking for people that, kind of check all the boxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you telling me that the training's gotten pretty crazy and intense, and that they sleep in like certain temperatures every night, right?
Oh yeah, well, that's during the training where it's all scientific now.
Yeah.
All scientific. They can look at, during training, they can look and see a guy running. And if he's not running properly, they can say, you know what, in 3 days he's going to have shin splints. And then they'll take him aside and it's phenomenally complicated the way they do this stuff.
Sounds like it.
Oh, it really is. I don't know how they do it. Because back in my day, they just said, okay, run over there.
Here's some speed and go.
Yeah.
No, where were you taking? Because I guess Pitts kind of took over your section or your area.
No, he. See, we used to move around because they call it TDY, temporary duty stations. You'd have your basic PCS station, permanent change of station, but then from there, you might go to this location for 6 months. You might go over there for 3 months, depending upon where you were needed. And so when I left and came back to the United States, I got transferred back. Pitts and Harry became partners. So basically, Pitts, took my place with Harry. He didn't take my place in PJ's.
Right. Okay. And so was Harry always just your partner?
Normally.
Okay.
Yeah, normally. Now, I've had other partners for a variety of reasons, but typically you stay with 2 or 3 guys because it's really, and a whole PJ unit might be 12 guys in a squadron, and so there's not a lot of us anyway.
And you guys were trained in field, like medical, right? Like field surgery type stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, air weaponry and.
Sure. You know, kind of the easiest way to think about how they're trained is that basically PJs and SEALs are trained exactly the same way, except it's emphasized in different areas. Where a SEAL has a totally different, they go in and kill things. The idea of the PJ is to go in there and save things and rescue things or recover things. And so you have the same skill sets. You have the same skill sets as scuba, combat dive school, jump school, Halo, high altitude, low opening school, survival school, jungle survival, Arctic survival, and all the weapons and things. So yeah, now they get trained in a lot more stuff, and it takes them now to get like 18 months worth of training. And when we did it, it was like 7 months.
And you were you were in Vietnam from which years to?
I was in country, not necessarily in Vietnam this whole time, but 66 to 68, I think. And that was a combination of Da Nang, NKP, Nakhon Phanom in Thailand, and then a couple little outer bases.
Well, did you guys ever call them like jumps or whatever? Was your first, because you got off the helicopter, right? You weren't obviously the engineer.
Oh, no. The way to look at it is the airplanes were there basically to get the PJs into location to do something if they had to do it. Yeah.
Your first time off the chopper?
Yeah.
Was that in Vietnam?
It was in Laos. Because an airplane had gone down in Laos was coming back from Vietnam or running a sortie in Vietnam.
Was that one pretty easy in and out, or was that?
Most of them are pretty easy. Yeah. Because if there's an issue, let's say a pilot gets hit or has an engine problem or something, they say they want to get their feet wet, which means they head for the ocean.
That's kind of what I was wondering.
And if they can't make it, then they go to an area close to where they know that the rescue units are. And if they have to punch out, they do. They get in there on the ground, and then it's more a question of were they injured punching out of the airplane or the landing in the jungle or whatever it was. But then what they would do, they would just pop smoke, and then we would get a bead on them because it's not like they had GPS back then.
Right. Yeah. No. It's.
And sometimes you actually see the pilot going down. And you're there on the ground, but almost by the same time that he
you're racing to You're both racing to the crash site, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty gnarly. Because the other thing that you were saying was wasn't Pitsenbarger. He was also the reason why you switched over to the Hueys, right? Or why the Air Force switched over to the Hueys.
Well, no, they were coming in the Jolly. We'd never had Hueys. We had the Jolly Greens, the HH-53s, and like that one, and
this one,
yeah, that's what took place of this, and that thing could carry anything in the world. You know,
this is a 50 cal.
No, that's a refueler.
Oh.
See where this thing couldn't go very far? That could fly out in the middle of the ocean and be refueled all the time.
I bet that was fun to ride in.
It was a lot more comfortable.
That looks like it could haul ass.
Did you ever see the movie? Mark Wahlberg, where they were fishermen and they were out in the storm.
Oh, Perfect Storm.
Perfect Storm.
Yeah.
That's what went out there. And the Perfect Storm, we lost 2 PJs because they went out to rescue those guys.
It was PJs that went out there?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, here's what happens. You got the Coast Guard.
Uh-huh.
And the Coast Guard is for basically guarding the coast and, certain range out in the ocean. If it gets further out where they can't fly, they bring the PJs out because they can go out anywhere. And if there's an issue, they can jump out of the airplane and do what they got to do. You know, like whether it's on a ship or whatever, you go out there, you jump. And so in the perfect storm, they were way out in the ocean. And if you remember the storm, one of those went down, one of the jollies went down because they couldn't hook up. They couldn't put that refueling probe into the back of the C-130 to get gas.
Because of the weather?
Because of the weather. It was like this, you know. And so the pilot, instead, he knew he was running out of gas. And so what the pilot did was he got down as low as he can go, and he had the guys jump out of the airplane. And one of the PJs that jumped out, they couldn't see anything. It's black.
Right.
It's dark. And they had the oceans going like this. And they tried to time it so when you jump out, you would hit the crest of a wave. But he didn't. And it was, you know, like in the trough of a wave. And so, you know, it's like jumping off a 10-story building.
Jesus.
So, yeah, but we lost some guys there.
Did you know them?
I didn't.
You didn't?
No, it was way after me. Yeah.
Jesus. I didn't know those were PJs. I thought, you think in the movie they even, are they PJs in the movie?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I think they used their right name as well.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to watch that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know that at all. That's wild. You'd be a good swimmer.
Yeah. That's one of the prerequisites. Really good swimmer.
How do you swim in that too?
Well, typically if you have tanks, you go under it, you know. But
I think that's where I would not do well, is in the swimming.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know, maybe with enough training. But I think that would be, yeah. Ugh. No, I thought the movie was done really well. I was talking to Mom about it and said, you know, it really came out at a weird time for cinema.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Not just because of everything transitioning from box office to streaming, but COVID. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, war films just don't do what they used to. I mean, even when they're like, the star is Mark Wahlberg. Because that one, it didn't really have it had like a main star, which was the guy kind of working to get it done.
Yeah.
But he wasn't it was really more of a co-starred movie. I love Ed O'Neill.
Yeah.
I think
who?
Ed O'Neill?
No, that was
or Ed Harris. Ed Harris.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Ed Harris. Who's Ed O'Neill?
He's isn't he the father in
who am I thinking about? Anyways,
that family, crazy family, Bundys.
Oh, that
isn't that him?
Yeah. Maybe I'll look it up after this. Yeah, I think it is. Anyways, but Ed Harris. Now Ed Harris played. Do you remember who's?
I don't remember his character, but he was one of the soldiers that was saved. Because if you look at the movie, it kind of goes, you know, from Samuel Jackson back and forth, and you can see who his character was in the movie. But he was one of the soldiers.
Ed Harris was, I feel, was an award-winning performance in that film.
Yeah, I saw a couple of them in there, I think. Yeah. Of course, it'll never win anything because of the subject matter, but
there is the scene in when he hands the letter over.
Oh yeah, to Jenny. Ooh. Yeah.
Man, no. The first time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To Huffman.
Yeah. When he hands that, he didn't have to say anything. That was some superb acting.
Yeah.
That one tear jerked me a little bit.
Yeah.
It was like you felt what he was trying to. Yeah.
Well, he felt guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would imagine.
Yeah, survivor guilt.
But that war, and I'm just talking from my perspective, fucked so many people up.
In so many ways.
Now, when you left, were you aware of the fact that we're semi losing, or like it wasn't as much as what home, like our nation was being told?
Yeah. I sort of had a more of a micro perspective on it, where, the things we were doing, we were basically winning at, but overall, it was such a political war. And McNamara should be shot as a traitor. He did so many crazy, terrible things, just to protect what they're trying to do there, and it cost a lot of lives.
That's what, yeah. It really sucks because you always hear the saying, "What's war is just old men talking and young men dying."
Yeah, and it was all about body counts, because they weren't winning the skirmishes or the war, the different firefights. But what they said was, instead of talking about whether we won or lose, let's just say, well, we killed 133 there, and so they're looking at body counts, and that's when the right way to do it. They really had no plan.
I'm reading a book right now. Have you ever heard the book Everything We Had? It's I guess it's a fairly popular book, and it's one man's perspective of his kind of boots on the ground, and his story actually. And well, that's the main book. I'm reading his second book, which is called To Bear Any Burden, and what you just said was what he said too in the first chapter. Was it turned from gaining land to gaining bodies?
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were here to take over, like in previous wars.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we're trying to take property or land over.
Yeah. And what was the reason we were there? It was a domino theory that we have to stop communism, and if we don't stop it here, then it's going to spread to Cambodia, and then Laos, and then Thailand, and it was kind of a screwed up theory. But you ever see the movie Hamburger Hill?
Oh yeah.
That is what Vietnam was all about. Go take that hill. You lose 25 guys taking the hill. You get to the top and you say, okay, go back, just leave it. Bad guys come back in again. Go take that hill again.
And that was just because orders were trickled down? Like,
they really couldn't do anything, without it coming from Washington. It was just crazy.
And then JFK was scared to pull out, right? Because of the re-election.
Who was?
JFK.
Oh, JFK.
Like pretty much, right?
Yeah, but when he got assassinated and Johnson came in, it just exacerbated the whole situation.
Okay. So I took another theory, and I want to get your perspective on this. So there's that scene in the film where they're walking through Abilene later
with the butterflies.
Yeah. And I always hear from you some of the most beautiful places that you've ever been to are Thailand and Vietnam.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You always say this. So I have this weird theory, and maybe it's completely wrong, but when I'm watching them walk through that, like my closest experience to something like that is Hawaii. And I'm guessing this is way more beautiful. Then I was watching the soldiers walk through the film, and it's essentially the same location.
Yeah.
And my mind was thinking, how fucking terrifying is it to be holding a rifle and slowly walking through this jungle?
Mm-hmm.
And there's the sensory thing going on with you where you're looking around, and it's almost like this, God, this is beautiful. God, this is gorgeous. Because you keep, like I said, you say it. And then slammed right into gear. Here's the firefight.
Well, frankly, it probably wasn't. Those guys weren't too interested in how pretty it was, but they had other things on their mind. And it was, the whole country was beat up terribly back then, And they weren't doing. They weren't shooting people at the beautiful islands and
right.
Yeah, but
no. Okay. I was just like, because I'm just thinking like it might have contributed to any part of just that psyche of flipping the switches, you know, to
Yeah.
and it's a weird war because your father, this one is
That's my uncle.
this is your uncle,
Yeah.
and this is your father, right?
This is my father over here.
Oh, this is your grandfather.
That's my grandfather.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the men before you, this is another part that I read, and then, I think this is just people's perspectives. Men before you came from this honorable fight in World War I, World War II.
It was easy to define who the bad guy was.
Yeah, and like you said, everybody had skin in the game, and
Yeah,
everybody gave up, you know, and chipped in and helped,
Sure.
and it was something to be proud of. And then when you came back to San Francisco, so yeah, I mean, you came back with the city of love, basically, and
Yeah.
did you experience any like of that backlash from being there?
Well, sure. I saw a lot of it. I didn't experience. I mean, you know, there's
Because I never hear you talk about it.
Huh?
I never hear you talk about like you experienced it, so I didn't
You know,
assume you did.
it was the time it was, and when I came back, I was just really glad to be back. And I grew up in the city, so I kind of had a flavor for what the city was all about anyway. But remember, they were having riots back then, and the riots, unlike the riots we're having today, the riots were to get out of Vietnam, you know, baby killers and all that kind of stuff. And you know, later on, after I finished school and I was a cop, I was at those riots, you know,
And fight them, and
Yeah. And so, and you got to remember that, you know, the Air Force's perspective on this war is a lot different, you know, than the Army guys, the guys who are on the ground. Because, you know, we go out and we fly for a couple hours, do whatever we had to do, and go back, you know, and have a
hot meal.
Yeah. And our biggest concern was, hey, it didn't make my bed very well this morning.
Oh,
you know?
jeez.
I mean, it was a totally different different deal.
Right.
And when, you know, you talk about my family, I've had family in the military all the way back to the Civil War, Revolutionary War. I guess Rosie figured that out when she was doing the ancestry. And I used to, when I was growing up as a kid, you know, my dad was a Marine, and he and my uncle, who died at Tarawa on the first day that they were invading Tarawa in World War II. But when I grew up, my dad used to tell me the stories about being a Marine and all those things, mainly because I would pry it out of him. And so I always knew I was going at some point to go in the military. And when it came time to go in the military, I kind of did the math on it.
You get the Purple Heart.
Yeah, because he got killed at Tarawa. Yeah, that was Fred. And so I'm listening to all these stories about the Marines and everything. And when it was time to go in the military, I went to 1 year of college. And what that 1 year taught me is that if I went to college for another month, I was going to flunk out. So I said, it's time to go in the military. So I did the math. I talked to the Navy. I talked to the Marines. I talked to the Army. You know, I didn't talk to the Coast Guard. But I said, you know, this Air Force thing's pretty good because I'm not living in a tent somewhere. You know, I'm not going to have a M16 strapped to my body and go in. So I did the math, and I said, I talked to a friend of mine, and I said, hey, I want you to meet somebody. And we went down to the Air Force recruiter, and we signed up. But,
so when you went in, you guys went to basic, right?
Yeah.
You went to basic.
Yeah, and it was funny because the recruiter, you know, during Vietnam, they would say or do anything to get you to sign up.
Because you had the draft too, right?
They had the draft too,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to get drafted because that's the Army.
Right.
I wanted to make the decision.
Right.
And my friend Mike, my good friend Mike, we grew up together from little kids, and we had a plan. And the plan was we wanted to be cops at a certain point in our lives, but we were too young. So we said, well, let's go in the military. We go into military police, and then after 4 years, we get out and we'd be old enough to go into the CHP. And so we told the recruiter what we wanted to do, and the recruiter says, "Oh no, it's a buddy plan. You come in together, and you stay together the whole time, and it's kind of like college because you have roommates, and he's going to be your roommate and everything." And so we were...
They fluff it up for you a little bit. They fluff it up a little bit?
Yeah, they fluff it up, yeah. And so the buddy system lasted until we got off the bus at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. But we were in the same flight there, and we actually did go to... we went through basic together. But he got his assignment as AP, air policeman, which was the plan.
Okay.
And they gave me my duty station. My job was going to be, it's called radio intercept analysis. And I'm looking at this thing, and I said, that didn't sound much like a cop. I said, what the hell is this? And they said, well, because of your test scores coming in, we needed to put you in to this area because it's the needs of the Air Force. And so I said, radio intercept analysis, what do they do? And he said, well, you get stationed, like 150 yards from Russia, and then you intercept these radio, and then you decipher them. I go, God damn, that didn't sound like much fun. And so I was pissed. And so there was one of the guys in my flight says, hey, I just talked to this guy. They're trying to recruit. It's called Pararescue, and he says it's really cool. They got jump wings and they do all that stuff. And I said, yeah, baby, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be a radio intercept anything. And so I went and I said to my tech sergeant that was in charge of our flight, I said, yeah, I want to be considered for this. And he said, okay. He set it up, and he says, go see this lieutenant. Because part of the whole getting to be a PJ, you have to go through a lot of evaluation first, and then you go into the pipeline to see if you can do that, and then you go into training. So it's really kind of a long 3-step process. And so I remember going in this little office where this lieutenant was, and we talked a little bit, and I told him, oh yeah, man, I really want to do this and all this, and only because it sounded like more fun than radio intercept analysis.
Did you have that kind of adrenaline in you then?
Probably.
Yeah,
probably. Youth and stupidity and everything. But anyway, so the criterion to get into PJs was real critical. I mean, it was very specific. And so they weighed me.
Do you remember what was like real specific?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. But it was height and weight, and they had to do endurance, and you had to do all that kind of stuff before they would even consider you. And so he weighed me, and I was like 6 or 7 pounds heavier than their chart says I should be. And he says, sorry, Airman, and he was getting ready. I go, whoa. What do you mean? He said, well, you're overweight. I said, overweight my ass. I said, I'm overweight because I have more muscle than probably anybody around. And I said, what do you want? You want 50 push-ups? I'll give you 50. What do you want? He said, yeah, give me 50. So I gave him 50. Then after the 50, I gave him another 2 or 3 or something, like hoorah. And
F you.
Yeah. And he said, well, you got to be a good swimmer. And I was. I was really a good swimmer. And I told him, I said, there is nobody on this base that can swim better than me. And so I just went on and on because this was my chance.
Right.
And he said,
is that a radio interceptor, right?
Oh. And and he said, you really want this, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he just thought for a minute or two, and he said, okay. And he gave me his thing. He said, okay, report here at a certain time.
That probably felt good.
Yeah, because so I went back to Mike, my buddy, and I said,
So from there, what happened?
From there, you got to go through you stay at Lackland, and after you get out of basic training, you go to wherever your school is that you're going to go to. And my friend Mike went to the Air Police School. I stayed at Lackland, and then they had to evaluate whether you had the physical ability. to do what was required. And so every day we would run, we would swim and do virtually everything, lift weights, everything. And a lot of guys at that point just said, "No, that's not for me." They would drop out. And then after that, they had I forget how many hundreds of guys tried to get out, and they whittled it down to 25 guys. And the 25 guys went into the pipeline. And then after that, they started going into the schools. And the first school that we went to was jump school, Army jump school.
Where do you do that at? Fort
Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
And it's a real treat being the only Air Force guys in a Army base. And there were some Force Recon Marines were there. There was us Air Force guys, and then
is that sarcasm?
School. What, huh?
Is that sarcasm? Being is it a sarcasm? Being a treat?
Yeah, it's a real treat. I'll tell you. I'll give you an example. You're out there with all these Army guys, and there's so much standing around, waiting around. I've never seen such a useless waste of time as the Army, the way they do things. But that was a long time ago. But anyway, so what would happen is your guys would screw up somehow, so they would drop everybody and say, "Okay, give us 25," so everybody going to give 25. And then the sergeant said, "Okay, recover, except for you Air Force pussies, give me another 10. So, I mean, that's what it was. Everyone thought that Air Force was a bunch of pussies, just because we had houseboys and guys making our beds. I mean, we're just smarter than the Army.
Well, yeah, all I know is stories from my dad and my grandfather being Marines, and I didn't want anything to do with that. I know what sucks, and I don't want to go too much into mine. I knew I wanted to be, I wanted to go Army when I was kind of in that right before everything went south for me.
Yeah.
I was literally in a recruiter's office.
Army or military?
Army.
Okay.
Because I was looking at military right before all the court shit, and I wanted to go. I went into the Army recruiters because I saw, it's so stupid, but I saw a movie and I read this guy who, the actual lieutenant who the story was about. Mm-hmm. And he said a quote that was kind of woke me up a little bit. And they didn't believe that they should be in, where was Desert Storm?
Yeah.
Black Hawk Down, the whole.
Right. Plus, there's a PJ on that Black Hawk.
So they didn't believe that they should have been there, and one of the guys in the unit was complaining about it, and the lieutenant looked at him and he said, "Look, the way I see it is, we can either do something about it, or we can sit at home and watch from C-SPAN."
Yeah.
He goes, "Which one do you feel better about doing?"
Yeah. That's good.
And I was like, "Whoa." Yeah. And I was just yeah. Anyways, the other part of the reason that I wanted to talk to you was because after watching that film, again, you don't see a lot of that anymore. You don't see a lot of, at least it's played down. You don't see that kind of era that really respects what was done, what sacrifice truly is. And I feel like we're almost right in the middle of another Vietnam type deal where people are just hate what all that stands for, and don't realize, it's in the movie Last Full Measure, Billy, the guy who played Billy, did you know that character or no?
No.
So, and from one of my grandfather's stories, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I remember when I was a kid, he told me when they were in Korea, when they hit the ground, everybody in front of him just dropped.
Yeah.
Because they got,
Sure.
and he was running, and he said he remembers smelling something so terrible. And I thought that this has to be a true story because of how embarrassing it is. And he was just smelled something so terrible, and by the time the firefight kind of started to die down and he actually got cover, he realized he had shit himself.
Sure.
And that's what it was. And I was like, Jesus. So that gave me kind of my first like taste of what it was to be in it. So in The Last Full Measure, Billy is when he's in the talking about the bar scene.
Yeah, right.
I don't think I've ever asked anybody if they've ever killed anybody. They're just out of respect, because it's nothing that you ask. Yeah. It's something that is voluntarily offered, and that's it. But I don't think people realize the ramifications or to the extent of what people did. And again, when he made that comment about what happened, were you running away?
Yeah, right.
Knowing the story, without again knowing it or whatever. What a fucked up thing to say, and good that he left that bar bloody. Yeah. Because I could see how that would just totally mess with you. But
I could see the other side of it. I could see some asshole in a bar, trying to after a few drinks, trying to be cute with his buddies and say something like that without really thinking it through.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But just with, I just have never, I've always looked at it like that, respectful, but I don't think other people do. And I think we're losing sight of how things were. And the way you put it was, and again in that film, was he's there because you're there. It wasn't about, the orders that were given. No. It was about, there's a man on the ground.
No, yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because there's no altruistic reason why you're over there. And the reason you do whatever you need to do is because of the guy next to you. And that's one of the ideas of, having a partner that you could really count on. And it's just, you absolutely do the things you do, not even for yourself, but for the guys you're with. It's a kind of an unusual, I mean, if you've never experienced it, you probably would never recognize it. But
camaraderie.
Yeah.
Brotherhood. I mean, it really is.
Band of brothers. I mean, that's real.
I think when you go through something that you have to actually survive, where it exerts you to the brink of survival.
Yeah.
With a group of men or women, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I think there's something there.
Yeah. And you just don't want to let your partner down.
Right.
And so you do whatever you have to do not to let him down. And that's a real strong motivator.
Like a real subtle analogy of that would be, the people that can't go to the gym without having somebody else work out with them because they know if they're there, they'll work a keep. Yeah. But that's just a real subtle analogy. But you guys were there because of the other guys. How often did you get a call like that wasn't down Air Force? It was actually Army or Marines that were in trouble.
Well, you mean during when we're in country? Yeah. Or anytime?
Let's go in country for right now.
Okay, in country. Every once in a while, it might be some Army guys that were shot up or whatever, that they needed evacuation, and the Army didn't have the capability or the helicopters to do it. Because Vietnam was a helicopter war. They changed their whole battle plans because of the helicopter.
Why?
Well, because they figured that they could move a lot of people over a long distance. And it's not like storming the beaches at Tarawa or Iwo Jima. They would take, and those Hueys wouldn't hold that many people. They'd hold like maybe 6 fully dressed
Is
soldiers.
That with pilots?
6 soldiers, okay. And then the pilots, but they didn't have any. So if they were going to move 100 guys into a forward zone somewhere, they need a lot of helicopters. That's why you see the long green line there, because they couldn't put 100 guys in one spot in one helicopter. So they'd have to come in. They come in quick. They come in fast, and then get their ass out of the way. And hopefully, they were in an area that is not going to overwhelm the first few helicopters, the guys that are in the helicopter, but they'll get that manpower there so they can do what they have to do. But, every once in a while, you would have to go in and just evacuate somebody. Now, they do it more now, like in Fallujah and all that, where they go in and they would pick up wounded civilians even and do it. But Vietnam it's a whole different deal.
It's got to be one of my favorite helicopters.
The Huey?
Yeah.
They got a very specific sound, the rotor sound.
Like I said, I love watching them. It doesn't matter if it's real footage or in just cinematic films.
Yeah, you can. You can hear those things. You know exactly what they are.
You rode in them?
Have I ridden in them?
Yeah,
I've never been in one.
You've never been in a Huey?
No.
Wow, weird.
No.
Why is that? Is it just because you guys
didn't need it? I guess.
Oh.
I know we had our own helicopters, even if they were inferior at first. But
those are cool.
Yeah, that's really Army. It's funny because even up here with the forest fires, I'll go out on the deck, and if I hear a Huey, I know it's the Cal Fire, because that's what they fly.
That's what they, okay.
And I go, oh, crap. Something's going on.
Did you ever, was there ever a time, obviously you never thought you shouldn't be there for your brother, but was there ever a time that it kind of clicked and went, we as a country shouldn't be here?
No.
No?
No, because back then I was young. I didn't really understand the politics of it. And I was feeling, okay, I'm here because my country needed me to be here. In retrospect, they, really didn't need us over there. It's kind of like what's going on now. And the thing about Trump, whether you love him or hate him, is that he recognizes, why are we, given blood and treasure over in these, countries who've been fighting with each other for 1,000 years. We're not going to change that. Just get our guys out of there. Let them do whatever they want. That's what Trump's trying to do, is trying to get us all out of there. The only time we should ever go into a war, in my opinion, is if it's something that really is going to impact the United States. Tangible, where you can identify it, not some vague, let's stop communist aggression crap.
Right. Yeah, that's, yeah. Oh, Cameron wants to go in the military.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah. You know what you should tell him to do?
Air Force?
No. Hell no. Wouldn't you rather be riding in a high-speed boat in San Francisco Bay?
Oh, National Guard?
Coast Guard.
Oh, or Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
National Guard.
If I was advising anybody, go in the Coast Guard.
I tried that too. After.
Yeah.
There's no true. That movie really is about that, though. I think that's really cool that it does give you that camaraderie feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, William Hurt's. Do you know if that ending breakdown was real or not?
It's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that Harry?
Yeah.
That's gotta be. Man. My hat's off, honestly, to you guys. I meant that email.
Yeah.
It's shit.
Well, you got to realize that when Harry went back, first of all, Harry left him there, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. Good, but he was in the high bird. They had to get out of there because they were taking so much fire and they're getting low on fuel, and so Harry. It's like leaving your best friend, your partner, and then coming back and find out that he didn't make it.
Yeah, that's not a. You don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, and so and if you have a feeling like William Hurt said, I was glad it wasn't me, but
then that sits with you.
Yeah, but he, and the way that. William Hurt, or Harry, took care of Pitts in the movie. On one of our Air Force reunions, Harry told your mom what he had done with Pitts. He recovered Pitts's body, and then when they got back to the base, he was alone with Pitts and cleaned him all up, dressed his head wound, made him look as good as he could. And so we knew that was real. And in the movie, yeah, it was, yeah.
That's, again, yeah, I don't wish it on anybody. The scene with the watch, when he takes Pitts' watch off.
Yeah.
You guys have something about watches? Or is that just a coincidence?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, yes, and I don't know. We do have a thing about watches. I don't know if the statute of limitations have run out on this or not, but they all PJs, they issued them Rolex Submariners, and everyone had one, and yeah, it was special. It was real special. Most of the guys left with the watches, and but I don't know what the issue. I'll ask Carrie when next time we see him, which will probably be next year, what that was, because that's a good question. I don't know if it was just, well, this was Pitts's, and I'm going to, it's too valuable to just let go.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the motivation was, but that's a good question. I'll try to find out the answer.
I was just wondering if there was a connection between you and your watches, and if there's a PJ thing with watches.
I don't know. I know that every time we show up at reunion, most of the guys
have watches on.
All the old 75-year-old guys are wearing their Submariners. Yeah, so I'm not sure what's going on.
See, that's where I'm in this weird position. Like I want to hear about things that you did, whether successful failures or what, or a total fuck up, or like job of a mission. I'm just talking. Yeah. But I hate asking those questions too.
Yeah. Well, not
just respectfully.
Not everything we did was successful. We would do the best we could, but not everything turned out the way we wanted it to. Now, personally, I mean, there's so many of the guys I worked with had it's all a crapshoot, because everyone, you're on alert because something's going on. Okay, then you get in the air and you're just kind of hovering around, an area for something to happen. Most of the time, nothing happens, but when something does happen, who knows what it's going to be like? It could be, kind of like what you saw in the movie, but rarely. There are some YouTube videos that you can look at about PJs in Vietnam or Jolly Green in Vietnam or something like that, where you see how a mission is actually worked. What would happen is if a pilot went down for whatever reason, they would put out the call, and then everyone would start converging on that pilot's location. And early in the war, what would happen is the Sandys, the little propeller right there, here, those would go in to an area, and they would strafe the whole area and would clean it out if there's any bad guys in there. And then the pilot would pop the smoke, and then the jollies or the helicopter would go in, and they had these guns on those things that were phenomenal. I forget what.
What did the pilots have to defend them? So just a handgun?
Well, the pilots?
Yeah.
Yeah, they mainly they had handguns.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they each had an M16 in the airplane for them in case they went down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
But they wouldn't have them on them, of course, they're
right.
flying. But anyway, then the jollies would go in, and if they had to, just clear the area, and then they would put the jungle penetrator down, and if the pilot was able to, he'd get on the penetrator to bring him up. Most of the time, they couldn't for whatever reason, whether they were either hung up in their parachute or they were injured or something like that. So then the PJ would go down.
That happened a lot?
I don't know how you define a lot, but regularly.
More often than not?
No, most of them were a little cleaner.
Yeah?
But then what started to happen later, is that the VC would recognize that if they didn't show themselves, they saw a pilot come down, and they get in that area, they'd wait for the helicopters to come in, and then they would take out the helicopters. They thought there was more advantage to doing that. So they kind of changed their tactics, and that's why the Sandys had to come in and really start lighting them up down there.
And the choppers would be hovering at around what height?
Well, it depends. If you're going in to get them, we only had 100 feet
Okay.
of the cable on it. So they'd be like 100 feet over the ground cover. So.
And you did that perfectly fine, huh? You just right out the door?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
Why?
Just because you get nervous around heights.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't like heights.
But it's funny.
It's funny, though, yeah. But, jumping never bothered me. And, rappelling out of a, helicopter never bothered me. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a control thing. I don't know.
Do you think it maybe like, because again, back to the character of Pitts,
yeah.
You guys all, at least again, from what I've heard, y'all have that same mindset where it's you turn it on what we have to do no matter what. Like, it's just keep going.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of guys, especially on the ground, they either had that or they didn't. They either could, or they processed it quickly and could turn it on. And then there was guys that were just too terrified.
Well, I think you got to define your audience there, because the guys that volunteered, like for PJs, they weren't going to turn it on and off. Most of the time, I think when the guys freaked out and everything, and I don't mean to be derogatory about it, but they might have been the guys that were drafted in the Army, didn't want to be there in any way. Right. And so that's a whole different mindset. Yeah. And
that's what I mean with those. Those units probably had those riddled without.
Sure.
And your guys' didn't.
No.
It was clean.
No, they wipe them out.
Eliminate
them before the training.
That's kind of what you're saying, is that extensive training. And that's what I was wondering, when you had that, you said it was like a 3 or 4 step process into getting in? Yeah. That's kind of like the whittling them.
That's why they weed them out. They do things, and if they can't handle it, they just...
Yeah. Like SEALs.
Yeah, SEALs are the same thing. The difference between SEALs and PJs is that if you are a SEAL, you go through SEAL training, which is terribly difficult. If you fail any one of the different tests or schools, you can come back and go through it again. With PJs, if you fail anything, I mean, it could be you didn't stay underwater long enough. You're done, and you're done forever. They won't take you back. And I think part of the reason they do that is because it's such a much smaller group in the Air Force. When you're talking about a total of 350, you can probably replace 1 or 2 of those guys, a lot easier than if you had to replace 100 in SEALs.
Right.
So, but you get back to being uncomfortable with heights, like I am. I'll tell you a story. You had to go to tree jump school.
Tree jump school?
Tree jumps, where you learn how to jump into trees, because a PJ will go to anywhere in the world under any circumstances, whether it's jungle, whether it's redwood trees, whether it's oceans, whatever.
Off the coast of Massachusetts.
Basically anywhere to do the job. And that's why we're trained in so many different things. But we had to go to tree jump school. We went to tree jump school in Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. And what they do is they have these heavy canvas suits and these helmets that's got the mesh face. Oh. And then in one pocket, they have rope. And if you land in a tree, what they treat you to do, and these trees in Florida were really freaking tall, and the parachute gets hung up on the top of the tree. And so then what you do is you take the rope, you put it on your body on a harness, and then you hang it onto the parachute, and you rappel down. Okay, and that's easy. It really is. It's easy.
Okay.
During training, what would you have to do is that they would put climbers on you, kind of like the telephone pole climbers.
Little spikes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you'd have to go back up and take your chute down.
Retrieve your chute?
Me. Yeah, you'd retrieve the chute because, hey, it's government property, And so
what?
So listen. So we had to go to tree jump training.
Then how are you supposed to rappel down if you retrieve the chute?
Well, afterwards, after you go all the way down, they say, okay, that was great. Take off your stuff, put on the climbers, go up and get your chute. So we were up at outside of Spokane, Washington. I forget the name of the Air Force Base up there. And we had to do tree jump. Had to stay current, so we had to do it again. And so I'm looking down at all these trees, and my buddies.
And you're in Washington?
In Washington, yeah.
So it's like totally different trees too,
Totally different.
Okay.
But I knew I was going to have to go back and get my parachute, And so the guys were going out, and they were getting hung up in the trees, and they're doing really great. And
you jump from planes?
Yeah.
And then you aim for the forest or the trees?
Yeah.
There was a spot.
That's during, yeah. And so when you jump, you have a jump master who checks the wind and everything. And when the jump master picks up the wind direction and the velocity, then you stand in the door and he picks up his count. I can tell you how that works. But then he'll hit you on the ass to let you know this is the time to jump out. And so we were over the trees, and I'm looking down, and I see all these freaking trees, and I see this big plain area, this open area, not a tree, it's probably more like a wheat field than anything else. And I'm looking down, and he hits me to go out the door. Didn't move. So we go another few seconds. He hits me again a little harder. Didn't move. Because I wasn't going up that tree after that fucking parachute. So I finally went out, and damn, I missed the trees. It was great. One of the greatest days of my life.
What was the shittiest training? What was probably the training that you hated the most? You wouldn't want to do again?
Survival school.
Why is that?
Well, I can say that there was a congressional investigation about this survival school, and they wound up closing it because it was too tough. But what they did was a part of the survival school, 1 week of survival school, they would, you'd have to go through, do all your escape and evasion techniques, and, they tell you how to do all that stuff. But ultimately, at the end of this, you're going to get caught, because the next phase is you're in a prison camp, and you have to learn how to survive in a prison camp. And you have to learn how to, try to get along, try to escape, put together escape committees, all this kind of stuff.
For how long are you in the prison camp?
A week. Wow. It was a bitch. Let me tell you what they do. First thing they do, you go in after you went through this 3 miles that you're trying to escape at night, escape and evasion, and they have these aggressor guys all around you with these guns that shoot blanks. But if you use the right technique, even though they see it, because they know where you are, they'll let you go. But anyway, you wind up in this prison camp. First thing they do is you take off all your clothes, you get naked. And then they put a burlap sack over your head. And you're standing in line with your left arm on the fellow shoulder in front of you. And you're naked the whole time you're in there. And they put you into these boxes that are like cells. And they're like maybe 5 foot this way and maybe 5 foot this way. Yeah, and concrete floor. And the only thing in there.
Where is this training at?
It was at Sturt Air Force Base. And the only thing in there was a coffee can that you would shit in or pee in. And that was the only thing there. And then they give you a number when they put you in there. And every once in a while, they didn't want you to sleep. They want sleep deprivation. So every once in a while, they come and they bang on your cell door. And if you didn't respond with your number, then they would do some additional things to you. Let's talk about that first. Let's say you don't respond. What they do is they come in, they take you out, and they say they're going to put you in their swimming pool. And you have this
burlap thing.
Burlap sack on your head. They'd have these holes dug in the ground that's full up with water from about 6 inches to the top. They'd put you in there, and then they would put this metal grate over the top of you. Jesus. So you had like that much that you could maybe catch a breath, and then they'd be there flipping water on you, all this stuff. And they're all trying to break you down to see, you know,
If you break.
yeah, you know, if you're going to make it or not.
Right.
And so then the thing that really bothered me in that whole week was they would try to beat you down any further, because when you go into the prison camp, they gave you a little bit of information, some secret information that you're supposed to not give away. And everyone gets a little bit different secret. And so then they try to put this whole thing together. But anyway, they had, remember, we're naked and we have a burlap sack over our head. And they say, okay, get in this box. And this box, I don't know, maybe 3 foot high. I don't know, because I've never seen one.
Right.
And maybe 24 inches wide. And I feel, the guy says, get in there. And I feel this thing. I said, there's no fucking way I get in there. And they got me in there. And I guess they have different size boxes for different guys. But you're in there, you're all crunched up. You can't even breathe a full breath.
Fuck.
And they keep you in there. Your legs go to sleep. Everything goes to sleep. And I don't know, it seemed like forever. But then they take you out. And then you couldn't walk. I mean, you just...
Right, yeah.
Because your legs were perfectly dead.
For how long were you in the box?
Well, it's hard for me to
judge.
judge.
You can't, yeah.
But you really have got to work on your mind when you're in there. You got to, you know...
It's more mental training.
It is, because most people go nuts. In fact, a lot of guys did go nuts. They, you know, start screaming and say, get me out of here. And...
did they pull them once they did that?
Yeah, but it wasn't just PJs that were in this. It was all air crews. So there'd be pilots
SEALs
in there.
do or did something similar, but no, where they did like a deprivation training. But I think they canceled it too. It was like back in the 90s. I want to say. Anyways,
yeah.
That, and then after they bring you out, they try to make you walk.
Well, no. Once you get you back, then they take you in and they have different interrogation techniques that they use, and they try to get information from you. But that you asked what was the worst part of all of my training? That was it.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it. And like I say, this survival school is for air crew members, whether they're pilots or load masters or anybody that's on an airplane who might get shot down in hostile territory.
What did it do anything for you positively? Like as far as your experience in Vietnam?
It was an experience, a positive experience. Maybe I figure that I can overcome a lot by letting my mind, you know, do what I had to do and not get wrapped up in what the incident was. So.
Would you go through that again, or what would be your hairiest experience in service?
Well, one of the missions we were on, I have pictures of it actually.
Which one? I've probably seen it, but which pictures?
I don't think you've seen it.
Really?
Yeah, because I think we just put them together.
Oh, okay. We'll have to check them out.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of hairy experiences, but the one I do remember, it kind of comes to mind, is there was a ship that had an injured crewman on it. And we flew out in the middle of the night off of Okinawa. We went out maybe 200 miles out to sea in the middle of the Pacific. And we had to jump in order to get to the ship. And so it was nighttime. We got all loaded up in our scuba gear. And our tanks that we use for jumping are relatively small because they're not the big 72s, they're much smaller. And I remember I was the first one out the door. And when you jump a scuba jump or a night jump, you go out one at a time. And there was two of us, and I went out first. And I remember chute opens. You know, I jumped out. You give it 2 or 3 seconds, and the chute should open. If it doesn't, then you have to do some other things. And the chute opened. It was really kind of a beautiful night. And I'm looking and I'm seeing my airplane go away. across the sky with his, red flashing lights and everything on, and it got really quiet, and I'm thinking, what the fuck am I doing out here, in the middle of nowhere? And when you're doing a water jump, what you have to do is you jump from 1,250 foot altitude, and on the way down, you unhook one side of what you do first is you have your oxygen, you put your mouthpiece in for your scuba gear, you put your mask on, and then you unhook one of your cape wells, which are the harness that keeps the parachute attached to you. And I remember that when we jump at night, we have these little strobe lights. And they are strapped, they're taped to your back of your tank. And I remember the last thing that the jump master does when you go out is he pushes the button on that thing. And it's one of these deals where it kind of winds up, it goes, and then flash. And I remember that's the only thing I could hear when I was going down. So what you do is you unhook half of your parachute and you hold it. And then as soon as your fins hit the water, you release it. And that way you don't get tangled up in your parachute or anything.
Okay.
And so you hit the water, and then you get out of your harness, release the other half of your chute. And then depending upon what the mission is, you either go underwater or whatever. And in the meantime, the plane's turning back around for my buddy to come. And I'll never forget, it was out in the Pacific, beautiful clear water. It was dark. It was middle of the night. And as my strobe light goes off, it lights up all of the water below me. And it was probably 3,000 foot deep. And all I can see was my parachute just kind of billowing down to into the depths. And every time the flash of the strobe light would go off, it would light up all the water around me, and I could just see this thing kind of billowing down there. And I'm thinking, man, I hope I'm the only one out here. I'm sure there's no sharks or anything, but anyway, that was, I forget what the question you asked me. But
no, what was the hairiest experience that you?
Well, let me tell you.
Wait, I don't understand. You jumped out.
Yeah.
I'm trying.
But then we went, once my partner got there, we went to the ship. Okay, because they put the ramp down on the side, and we paddled or swam over there pretty much underwater. And we got to the ship, and then we went up and we took care of this guy that was there. And then we took the ship back to Okinawa.
So the ship was like taken over or pirated?
No, it was not. It wasn't bad guys. It was just some guy who got injured on the ship.
Oh, he got injured.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
sorry.
No, didn't even have a gun.
Gotcha. Okay. When you said take care of. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm just talking about different kind of weird ass experiences.
So yeah, I was just saying, like, would you rather, experience your hairiest? So that would be like one of your hairiest experiences, or
I don't know. I don't know how you define that, but it was one of the. I remember that one.
Do you ever have a moment where you thought like, you might not make this one? No?
No. No, never did.
That's.
I don't think you can. I'm not sure you can really think that way.
No, you don't think that way.
I don't know if you could or not. But maybe I just wasn't in the right circumstance. Or nothing hairy enough. One of the two. Yeah, when you say hairy, it's something that is a little out of the ordinary, a little unusual. I'm not sure.
I guess I just, I think you guys all had your experiences of probably, when we talk about, when I showed you that video of the man in Shasta who explains his experiences with war, and he's seen the ugly side of humanity, and we talk about like Vietnam and kind of the psyche involved with everything. And, you hear a lot of stories about kids that were used from the VC, for just evil purposes. Again.
Yeah. And see, that's a whole different experience when you have somebody that's really, infantry on the ground that, we just don't have that kind of experience. Our whole job was totally different.
Yeah.
But I would imagine, and I'm sure that those guys saw a whole bunch of stuff that was really, really nasty. We had a tendency more to go in after the fact. And whatever the issue was that required us had already happened.
Right.
And where they're kind of cleaning it up and, providing medical or anything like that.
Well, and that's why I think in the film, I wish it would have highlighted more about the PJs, because I think for the most part, everybody gets a good feel for what the men on the ground go through and have done.
Yeah.
Whereas in those special units like your guys is that would swoop in and again, you point these things out in like other films about true stories of things that have happened. It's like, oh, I didn't even know that was a PJ.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no, they don't even get that like highlight. And I felt like Pitts was really that opportunity to kind of like, this is what the PJs almost like stood for. I mean, this is their motto, was this guy.
That's right. Yeah. And you do whatever you have to do. And the philosophy behind rescue squadrons is every pilot that flies into danger has to know that there's somebody going to come in for him no matter what. And that's gives him another self-assurance and he knows that he's not going to be left alone. He knows that we're going to do everything we can to get him out. So
what you're saying is something that is the most profound thing that I take from not only military, but a lot of these stories, especially this one, is that camaraderie, that brotherhood. You know that someone's there for you, and you're going to be there for them as well. You having that knowledge. I remember you telling me once before, it's from Pitts' perspective, watching them making that decision, that he's going to stay so he can get help.
Right.
That's a huge decision. And what you had said something. I'm paraphrasing what you said, but you said that's basically your whole world is that chopper.
Absolutely. And
I could see that, especially when you hear about it, like, who are you? Who are you? Why are you here? Why type of deal? It's you guys came in to where it's hot. I mean, it wasn't like you guys were patrolling. I mean, you were, but it was when you were called, it was a hot spot, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing about Pitts in the last full measure is that his was his day off.
Shut up.
No, it was his day off.
Really?
Yeah. And Harry told us that.
Oh, and, Jesus Christ.
And he said they had this alert, and it was something they see. Typically, you get airborne because you know that you got Air Force guys going in on a raid or something like that. But so they really weren't on alert. But I mean, they're always on alert there. But it was his day off, and they said, "Hey, we got a hot one," and he said, "Yeah, I'll go," and he just did it. Yeah, you don't even give it a second thought. It has to be done. You do it. Whatever. You don't think about, well, I wonder how this is going. You don't think about that. You just do it.
And everything you're saying is exactly what I meant. Is you take. I took that from his character.
Yeah.
But that's me knowing what the PJs are about, and what from what you guys say about Harry, from what you guys have said about. I mean, it's just from the unit itself.
Yeah. Do you remember in the movie where Pitts marked that guy's forehead in blood?
Yes. Yeah.
You know what that was all about?
No.
He took the blood and he put an M on his forehead, and that's to let them know once he gets out of the jungle and in the helicopter that he already had morphine. Because you see, he put morphine in the guy's.
Okay.
And so they don't want to overdrug him, so they put M. He's already been given it.
Okay.
That's what you did. Which is a subtle little thing.
Yeah.
That you don't pick up on.
Yeah. No. I didn't even think to ask that either. Yeah. I liked the way it bounced too, kind of back and forth from flash forward, flash back.
I think that's the way to identify the characters in later life.
Yeah. It's a good balance. Did you know what's his name's character?
Hoffman? No, Coop.
Coop?
No, go ahead.
Is that who it was?
I
Cooper?
don't know. I'm not sure who you're talking about.
The guy that was like, "You understand what I'm saying, sir?"
Oh, Peter Fonda.
Was that Peter Fonda?
Yeah, that was his last movie.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know it was Peter Fonda.
Yeah, I didn't know any of the Army guys at all. I never had any contact with him, because the first contact that you ever had with those Army guys like that was the raid, and then it was everything that happened afterwards. So
where were you when you heard about Pitts' passing?
Hamilton Air Force Base.
So you had already been.
Yeah, that's why Harry had a new partner, because they transferred me back to Hamilton.
How long was Harry with Pitts for?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that.
Well, you said you got out when?
68.
And that was
66 when Pitts died.
Well, you got out of country when?
60. Well, it was 66.
Okay.
Yeah, early 60s. So yeah, so if you do the math there, I guess Harry and Pitts were together maybe 6 months, something like that.
Okay. Still.
Well, I'll tell you another story. Did I tell you about when we used to do our scuba jumps at Bodega Bay?
Little bit.
Okay.
I think. You've. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it just came to me.
Which one is it?
At training, we used to do training. Had to do training scuba jumps every once in a while. And when I came back to Hamilton, we used to do our scuba jumps at Bodega Bay. And so you go out to Bodega Bay, and the first time I did a jump out there, I land in the water, and the Coast Guard is there to help us retrieve our chutes and everything. And there's a Coast Guard guy on the bow of the boat, and he's got an M16. And I figured he was like shooting cans or something. And so I'm laughing. And I said, hey, thanks for the help and everything. I said, what's with the M16? I thought he was playing around. And he said, well, we got shark issues here. And I go,
shit.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking, I need to get my ass out of the water here. And it turns out that from Bodega Bay to the Farallon Islands to south of San Francisco, they call it the Red Triangle. And why do they call it the Red Triangle? It's a breeding ground for great white sharks. For real. And
you're in that?
I'm in the water, and Bodega Bay is the hatchery for whatever they call it for these damn sharks, and they're up there with an M16 in case they see a shark, and so
in dark waters, by the way, too.
Yeah, you can't see more than 3 feet there, and so we get our chutes out, and we go. I go back to the guy that's in charge of the PJ unit at Hamilton. And I said, "What the fuck's this all about?" I said, if instead of going west for our water jumps, let's go east, Lake Berryessa. The biggest thing there is going to hurt you is a giant bass. And so from then on, and I told him, I said, besides, we don't have to have the Coast Guard helping us. You don't have salt water in all your gear, so you don't have to worry about that.
Made sense.
Yeah. And so then, as long as I was we were doing our scuba jumps at Lake Berryessa.
Where there's no sharks.
Well, no, it might be a carp.
I can't do dark water like that.
No, I can't either.
I like to see. I need a fighting chance.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
That's wild.
We got attacked by sharks.
Did you?
Yeah.
When?
On Wake Island. I didn't tell you that story.
No, I don't think you told me this.
On Wake, we used to go to Wake Island for a number of reasons, but one day we were diving at Wake. We did a lot of diving at Wake Island. And Wake Island is an inactive volcano. And you know what a volcano looks like. And it's there's hardly any landmass on Wake Island. And, you hear all these, read all these stories about what happened during World War II about Wake. But anyway, there's 3 little reefs, and to go to the deep water, what you have to do is you have to swim out about 25 feet, and then that's where it'll drop down to maybe 30 feet, and then you go out a little bit further, it drops down to maybe 100 feet, and then you go out a little bit further, and it drops down to 3,000 feet. And we see sharks on virtually every dive in the Pacific. I mean, you just see them. So my buddy Cecil and I, what we would do to save air, we wouldn't go on air until we got over deep water, and then we would go down. So what we would do is we would snorkel out through the foamy little waves that were coming in there, and get out and then go down. So we're snorkeling out, and as soon as we came off of the shallow reef, which is like maybe 2 or 3 feet that we're swimming in, the water was all kind of churned up and everything, and we looked down, and here comes a shark. And if a shark's coming after you, there is no doubt, because their fins are down, and this mother was coming just like that. And he was maybe, it was a small reef shark. He was maybe 6 foot, black tip, and here he's coming. And so Cecil and I immediately went on air, and we went down, and Cecil was ahead of me, and the shark was coming more at Cecil, and he went down and he had his arbalete spear gun. And as the shark was coming up, Cecil went right at him, met him, and because we were in the foamy water where the shark really couldn't see anything, couldn't identify us, and that's what they do. He hit the shark, tried to hit him on the nose, he hit him somewhere, and then the shark, as we're going down deeper and deeper, the shark kind of circled us 3 or 4 times, seeing that we were big as he was, and just kind of left. Just kind of left. So technically, we were attacked. We didn't get bitten,
right? Okay,
but that was
I'm sure
that
you
was
guys
interesting, and I have pictures of that as well.
Do you?
Not of the actual shark, but
I'm sure that was pretty intense.
It was intense. Yeah.
I have. That's pretty much for the most part, though, right? You just kind of hit them and they go away.
Well, that's the only time we've ever had to. With sharks, what we found, and we saw many sharks, and is that if the water's clear and they can see you without their senses of smell and motion and everything, if they can see you and you can see them, you don't really have to worry about them. And we were around a lot of sharks, but you just sort of didn't have to worry. But if it's water that you can't see, yeah, you're in deep trouble.
Because they can't tell.
They can't tell.
Yeah, and you and a seal.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I never understood like
wetsuits.
Wetsuits.
Make them pink.
Right. I was like, make them white or something. Yeah. I mean, doesn't that like kind of give off the appearance of a seal?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were a shark. Do you have a mission you're most proud of? Whether one that just kind of stands out?
Not really.
No,
there's
nothing that,
because they were all different, but it was all it's funny because one of the guys who used to work, well, Harry, of course, but and Harry and Pitts, they were on the same mission. Pitts got the Medal of Honor. Harry was on probably 3 or 4 times as many missions as Pitts. Never got any medal. So and it's not about the medals, obviously,
right.
But the point is that you go out and do it, and if something happens where maybe the pilot says, oh, you know what, maybe we should put in for this or whatever, but it might be the same mission, and one is recognized with some sort of medal, and most of them aren't. It's just the way it is.
The book that I'm reading right now, he talks a lot about his story is a lot similar to where Billy's was, where he kind of came back and he didn't really recognize his country anymore, and decided go back, but he went back as a privatized unit or something, and I'll clarify later. But he says from his experiences, from most people in Vietnam, the people that lived there, they just kind of bent to the will of whoever, so to speak, whoever had the biggest stick. Like if the VC had the bigger stick, like they just bent to their will. If we did, then they did the same thing. But what they were truly interested in was just living and farming their own land.
Like most people.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they just really wanted to live off their land.
Yeah.
They didn't care about capitalism or
communism or anything.
No, that's what he was saying in his book, is like they didn't have any interest in any of that. They just didn't want to, or they just wanted to be in their own country. And which was wild. I thought it was interesting reading about all the letters that were written to Truman from Ho Chi Minh, all the build-up, and that never got there. That was all wild. Vietnam's a weird war to learn about. It's really hard almost to teach. It's so convoluted.
Yeah, I have a book that I'll give you.
Yeah?
And you can just read one chapter. It'll sum up the entire war.
Oh, I think, yeah, you told me, yeah.
I'll give that to you. I find it interesting because there's a lot of stuff going on, but H.R. McMaster's general, he wrote about it, and it'll give you a real good insight as to what was going on and how screwed up it was.
Did your dad ever have a perspective he shared with you about it?
You know, my dad was a totally different war, obviously. And what they did was hardcore stuff. You know, because he was at Iwo Jima, he was at Guam, he was at the Guadalcanal, and those were hardcore. You know, where you get in a landing boat, you go and you hit the beach, and I mean that's tough stuff.
No, that's
and,
rough stuff.
And my uncle Fred, you know, when he was lieutenant in Marines, and what happened there is they were invading Tarawa. And the guys screwed up, and they thought the tides were going to be high, and they were actually low tides, and the landing boats got hung up on the reefs, and they were just sitting ducks, and the Japanese just blew them out of the water. And the guys that had to get out of the boat and try to make it to land, they were carrying so much equipment, a lot of them just drowned.
You know, I don't know who I was listening to, but they said one of the most realistic movie scenes that if you ever want to understand what any type of war was like, you know.
Let me guess, Tom Hanks?
Not just him, but the opening scene of Normandy and Saving Private Ryan. They said
that's what I'm saying. Tom Hanks, and that it was his movie. Yeah.
So I guess there was a man who was I want to say he was ex-Navy, but his grandfather was a Marine.
Yeah.
And in World War II, and he says his grandfather never did anything like that. Like, didn't really talk much about it, but he also didn't tell stories.
Yeah.
And he said he watched that movie in theaters with his grandfather, and his grandfather walked out in the opening scene, and he had to chase his grandfather down. Yeah. And he says, "What?" And he goes,
"Too real."
He says he started smelling kerosene.
Yeah.
Or not kerosene, or something like that. Whatever they used, he said he could smell it.
Now, are you talking about for the boats, or are you talking about napalm?
I think it might have been the napalm, or no. Or was it the flamethrowers that they were?
Oh yeah, that's napalm basically.
Yeah, so he said he could smell it.
Napalm's nasty shit. That's some nasty ass stuff.
So was Agent Orange.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, that's wild, and that was just to destroy crops, right?
Yeah. What's that?
That was just to destroy crops, right?
Yeah.
Food supply.
Defoliant. Yeah, it was nasty ass stuff. But that was, you know, who put it out was Air America.
Oh, because
the CIA did it. Yeah.
And you, did you do any missions with Air America?
Just covering them.
Just covering them.
Yeah, just covering
Thailand.
Thailand and Laos and Cambodia. Yeah.
Yeah, that's war's not pretty, but it's
no.
I think when it's just I think just signing up is a sacrifice in itself, and just being a part of it, whether you're willing to be any part, an engineer or but I think that's again, I always say I feel kind of robbed of it. I really do. But I've always respected and commended people that like you and your family and anybody that gets in.
Yeah. I think it's going to be different from now on, hopefully.
Well, it's ever changing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's but the stuff that you guys went through, it's yeah.
Yeah.
But well, so your training, the one that you were talking about, where it was like nasty, the survival training.
Survival school.
Did you know the guys that were?
It's funny, because at a certain point, the guys that are the bad guys at the survival school are Air Force or Navy, or but they're Americans, and they wear the Russian uniforms and all that stuff. And one of the reasons that they covered your head when you went in there, because they didn't want you to identify these guys, and because after a few days, you swear these guys are not the real deal, because you go in there saying, "Oh, this guy's a tech sergeant from Omaha," but after a while, they got you believing.
They really fucks with you.
Yeah, they'll stand you up and slap shit out of you. They were doing that kind of stuff, and you never saw them around the base. They didn't want to be identified, and because they knew they were. I think I got some pictures coming out of that too. It just as an aside.
Yeah.
But, yeah. No, I.
Did you did? But did you ever identify one?
No.
You probably would want to kill him, huh?
I'm not sure. I was so happy to get it. Oh, here's what happens too. When you go through survival school, you go through the week of prison camp, and then you go out into the mountains for a week. And the only thing they give you is a limited number of matches, and they teach you how to trap animals and live off the land and all this stuff. And so they give you a knife, they give you several matches, and I forget what the hell else it was, but you go out there and they give you a coordinate, and they put you in 2-man teams. And my partner there was a Air Force pilot, and they give you a coordinate of where you have to be, and you have to be this area, and this is the Sierra Nevada mountains, and you had to be there at a certain time. Between a certain time, give you like an hour. And if you get there, they'll give you the coordinates to your next place that you have to go. And the whole time you're there, they have what they call aggressors that are there, and they try to find you. They try to tip you, and they give you a scorecard. And if you get captured or you do something wrong, they punch your card. And so you're out there for a whole week, and they teach you how to do snares and all this crap. But the problem is you're moving all the time. So you can set a snare, but unless you get something in the next 35 seconds, it doesn't do you any good. So we were reaching into these streams, eating these freshwater mussels and that kind of stuff, And we got out of there 7th day, and the thing what happens on the 7th day is you go back into, put you back into buses, and they take you back to the Air Force Base. Then you got to go in for a test, a written test. And they grade it on a curve. And if you didn't make it, you would immediately get on the next bus and go back out in the mountains for another week. Okay? And I told my partner, I said, there ain't no fucking way I'm going back in those mountains. Because I said, you know what the 7 days in the mountains taught me is on the 8th day, I was going to fucking die. And smart guy. He was, like I say, he was a pilot. And he said, hey, Andy, sit next to me. And so we go to this classroom. I'm sitting there. I didn't even look at my paper. I'm sitting there like this, looking at his paper and just marking it down. I got a hell of a score on that thing. But there's no way I was going back in those mountains.
What was the worst part of
that? Probably it rained. And I remember one of the PJs was in this class. He was in a sleeping bag, and it rained, and he woke up in the morning almost dead, and he was incoherent because of it was cold. And that was probably the worst thing. But then a couple of the guys, we knew that the aggressors were out there in the mountains with us. And these guys are living large, man. I mean, they got food and they had candy bars and all that shit. And so a couple of guys went and raided their camp. They found out where these guys were and went and raided their camp. And they brought back a whole bunch of crap for us, you know. Yeah, we heard about that.
Have you ever implemented any of your training, your military training, into your cop days?
Well, it's a whole different mindset.
Even if you were fucking around.
I don't know. We talking statute of limitations here? I better wait and check.
I'm pretty sure we're beyond it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could throw a Molotov cocktail through a federal building, I'm pretty sure you can say a few things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was the same thing, you know. I had a partner, and it was kind of the same deal.
Just looked out for each other.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, you had a better mindset, it sounds like, though, too. I mean, you told me that one situation where you guys pulled over the guy that was or the kids that were smoking weed. Was off the Bay Bridge or the Midtown?
Oh yeah, it was on a freeway. It's not even there anymore. It was on the Central or the Embarcadero Freeway, right in front of the ferry building, and they tore that down. Yeah.
And then it was a felony, but you guys were.
Oh yeah, back then, yeah, a lid was a felony. A lid of marijuana, and so my partner Dave and I, we were. It was night, and we're riding our motorcycles. We're going down the Embarcadero, and Dave, we come up on this car, and Dave lights them up, and they go off the freeway and stop, and it's a carload of kids from Burlingame or.
You're on bikes or in a
motorcycle,
patrol car?
Motorcycle,
okay, you're on bikes.
So Dave lights them up, and which is appropriate for this story, and we stop these kids, and Dave goes up. It was his out, so he goes up and asks for driver's license, registration, and I on the other side of the car with my flashlight, just kind of looking around, more letting them know that there's two of us than anything else, and Dave searches the car, and which you can't do without probable cause, right? But Dave searches the car and finds these guys have grass on them, and the kids are really nice kids. And the first thing everybody has to pass when they deal with a cop is the attitude test. You know, you walk up to somebody and the guy's a prick. Guess what? He failed the test.
Yeah.
And these kids were just nice kids. And Dave had the interaction with him, and Dave says, you know, it's a felony to have this little bit of grass, and kind of, you know, scolded him a little bit. And he said, you know what? If that grass gets out of my sight and goes down this drainage right here, I'd have no reason to arrest you. And so Dave walks back to the bike, and you see these guys putting all this stuff down there. And when Dave walked back to me, I said, yeah, what was going on? He says, well, I saw one of them passing a cigarette to another one. He says, nobody passes cigarettes anymore, you know? So I said, hey, good call. Good call. But anyway, yeah, we let him go.
Observant.
Yeah.
But that's what's cool, because I think there needs to be more cops like that have that. Instead of that, and I think there are, to be honest. I think for the most part, what I've witnessed is just more cops that are like that than there are I'm the law type of deal.
Well, you know, I worked with some guys whose badge was pretty heavy, and you try to straighten them out, because once again, you got a pretty close-knit group, at least in California the way it was. When I was a cop in Colorado, it was a whole different ballgame. And that's a horror story. But in California, you know, you watched out for everybody. They watched your back. If some guy was a little heavy, or if a guy was out there, we used to have this award every month. It was like a trophy, and it had a pencil on it. It was all flamed and everything. And they used to call it the hot pencil. And what that was for is, you go out there, and we had a routine. You go out there, you put 100 miles on your bike. You know, you write 2 or 3 tickets. Everyone's happy. Then you got some schmuck coming in from another area, and instead of writing 2 or 3, he writes 12 a day, makes everybody else look like shit. And so you have take him aside a little bit, you know, give him the trophy and say, this is the last time you're getting this trophy. Yeah. But it's different now. It's different. I don't know why anybody in their right mind want to be a cop right now.
My kids want to be a cop.
Don't let them do it. Don't let them do it. I'm telling you. Why would you do it?
I don't know. I don't think it's about letting them do it. I mean, kind of the whole thing with Pitsenbarger's dad even said, you know, it's whether he didn't want him to do it or not, it's up to him. And I could see the allure, especially with Beckham, because he wants to help and he's really good at helping. And I think that's what draws him to it. And I totally get it because I just read that there's a green light for over 36 gang members in Chicago to shoot and film any officer that has their weapon drawn for any purposes. So I get it. I'm terrified if one of my kids ends up being a cop. However, I have to also know that their heart is in the right place. So the silver lining in that is that I've raised a son that wants to do something good.
Yeah.
So I get it. I mean, I have a friend who literally was a SFPD who literally turned it in. He said, I'm done. And he wants to go be a sheriff in the hills. Him and his wife moved.
Totally different job.
Yep. His wife probably was the same one going, nope. But no, so I mean, I get it. But I have to, I mean, it installs good morals and at least a compass of right and wrong and decision making. And it kind of comes back to that quote that I read that made me want to join. And when I wanted to go after being a ranger was you can either sit back and watch it or you can do something about it.
Yeah.
And I commend more people that end up getting off their ass than
I think that makes a lot of sense normally, but this is not normal times.
Don't you think we need it though too? We need that mindset of.
Well, yeah, but who's on the cop side? No, seriously.
I agree. I totally agree.
If the people you work for and who are controlling what you do aren't supporting you, and the people on the street want a piece of your ass.
So what's the answer?
Well, I'll tell you what the answer is. I'm not sure it's ever going to happen. But it comes down, in my opinion, to naivete on the part of the people that are running the states or the municipalities, where they think they really don't have a concept on what life is really like. It's ugly, and there's bad people out there that you cannot reason with, you cannot cajole, you cannot bribe, because their only purpose and their only thought is to bring harm to you.
And anarchy.
And they got, anarchy is what's happening right now. But they've never had real life experiences, whether it's from, the ultra liberal, unrealistic education that some of the kids are getting, or whatever it is. Here's what I think happened that's causing all this violence in the streets right now. Way back when I was a cop, which is a long time ago, we were dealing with riots and things like that as well. But the people on the street, the bad people, and I use that term loosely. I mean, they're not all murderers, but that don't, that set fires to things. They either have to fear the police or respect them. If they don't do either one of those two, then you are going to have anarchy. Now, there's bad cops out there, like we talked about earlier. There's badge is really heavy, and a lot of times guys make mistakes out there. But most of the cops that I've worked with and most of the cops that are out there now are good guys. This all started with de Blasio, in my opinion, with de Blasio in New York. Do you remember the incident where somebody threw water on that New York cop?
Vaguely. It does ring a bell, but vaguely, yeah.
Okay, what happened? The cop turned and walked away, sulked away. Okay, so the guys that do that and that see it say, you know what? These guys aren't so tough.
Blood in the water.
So then what they do is, instead of water, next time it's a frozen bottled water. Next time it's a brick, whatever.
It's gasoline.
Back when, and not too long ago, you work in the street. Somebody does that to you, that kid's going down. New York used to be a pit, an absolute pit. Times Square was full of porno theaters, and then Giuliani came in. And how do you clean up a large city like that? How do you do it? You do it by, the first time you see a little bit of graffiti on the wall, you paint over it, you clean it up. First time there's a broken window, you fix the window. The first time some punk jaywalks, you write them up. You got to come down on the little things, which makes the larger things work. Well, when de Blasio and everybody gives the orders to the cops, don't respond to this stuff, don't respond. It's just going to get out of hand, more out of hand, more out of hand. Talk about Portland. You know, those liberal idiots up there, they're still idiots because they should have come down. The first time they tried to take over that little section of Portland.
That's gotten too far.
Go in there, clean them out. Guess you stop it when it's small. Now look what's happening. It's huge. Now it's a big-ass problem. And now you got to bring in the National Guard. And you can't bring the National Guard in unless it's requested by the locals. Well, they're too proud or naive or whatever word you want to use to do that. And so it's totally going out of control.
So then they should, in my opinion, they should have any emergency national funding for disaster relief or whatever for that kind of stuff cut off because they didn't take the prior steps.
Yeah, well, Trump's talking about doing that right now, and he's taking a lot of heat for it by, in these cities that are out of control.
Makes sense.
And, just take away any possible funding that they might have. But then you got to nail it when it's small, because now it's grown in such proportions that it's a real big deal. You handle the issue when it's small, and it's over with. Now, let's talk about cops and shooting people. The Floyd case where his carotid artery and he couldn't breathe because of that Minneapolis cop on his knee, crazy. That happens. Okay, take care of that cop. But there's a common denominator in all of these unarmed police shootings. And what's that common denominator? The person that the cop is dealing with disobeys the cop. That's the common denominator in all these things. Let me tell you how it works out there. You're told that when you go out there and you're enforcing the laws that politicians made up, and your job is to enforce the laws, you go out there to enforce them. If you tell somebody to do something and they don't do it, you take it to the next level. And if they continue, you take it to whatever level it needs in order to have them comply. If a person it doesn't comply, what do? You tell them to get in the car. You tell them to sit down, put your hands up, whatever you tell them to do.
They told him all that.
I know, but if the person doesn't comply, what do? Do you walk away?
No.
Well, that's what these cops are being told. But if they don't comply,
they're going to find themselves with really small police departments.
It's happening right now.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody's going to want to be it, and that's why I'm suggesting that your kids don't be it. But here's the deal. If a cop tells you to sit down and put your thumbs in your ears, do it. And he may be totally wrong, And then, afterwards you get the attorney and you sue his ass. But it's you suing the cop at that point, not your heirs.
Right.
Because the cop is going to fucking win on the street. He's got to. Otherwise, it's anarchy.
Yeah.
So comply.
It should be common sense. I agree with you. It should be common sense because what dawns on me as we're talking about this is I was taught that if your registration and your insurance is in the glove box, if it's in the center console, if it's somewhere where you have to reach for it, let the officer know. My stuff's when he asks for it, he or she, when they ask for it, I'm going to reach in here. I'm going to grab my stuff, okay?
Sure.
That's simple. I mean, it takes nothing. But by doing that, I always thought, like, that way they don't get trigger happy and shoot me if I'm reaching. But I never thought of it because of my skin color. I just thought of it because you do it because they have a gun and they deal with this kind of shit all the time where the people do reach in and grab something and shoot back. And that is that's literally the officer's job, is to deal with people like that.
Yeah.
On top of traffic stops. So
traffic stops probably one of the most dangerous things you can do because you really don't know what you have.
But you're also trying to be aware of vehicles behind you too and all around you, right? Yeah. I'm coming from CHP. You pull a lot of people off the freeway.
Yeah.
That's one of
I'll tell you what, if every person has gotten shot, unarmed person, I don't care what color they are, if they had just done what the cop told them to do, the first command that the cop gave them, they'd be alive today. There's no question about that.
Oh, well, if George Floyd would have. Because they said, wasn't his first autopsy, isn't it initially...
it was drugs and then...
heart?
Yeah. But that one was the thing that started all this. But the
whole video...
Here's the other thing.
You saw the whole video, right?
Yeah.
I did. That bugged me that it took months for the whole video to come out.
Well, it's PC stuff. But let me give you another example of how ignorant and naive some of these politicians are, the leaders of the country, of the state and of the cities. Let me tell you how ridiculous some of these people are. Way back when I was a cop, you used to have 2, maybe 3 methods of control of somebody. You would have a nightstick and you'd have a gun. And there's a whole lot of people out there that can kick your ass. And people would use a nightstick, and then if the nightstick wasn't doing the job and the person you were trying to subdue was coming after you, you'd have to use a gun. Because you know the guy that's coming after you can kick your ass, and if he gets your gun, you're going to die. And so you shoot him. You shoot an unarmed guy. That's a good shoot, by the way. So people were complaining. We have to, we can't just go from a nightstick to a gun. That's just, there's got to be something in between that you can do. So what do? Okay, let's use tasers. Okay, makes sense. So you go from a nightstick to a taser to a gun.
No, tasers are lethal.
Okay, then they say, okay, well, let's do mace. Okay, let's do tear gas. Let's do rubber bullets. They have all these non-lethal ways to control the crowds and the people that you need to deal with. What happened now? They outlawed tasers, outlawed rubber bullets, outlawed smoke grenades. What are you back to? You're back to the stick and the gun. I mean, this whole thing's regressing. Why? Because the naive politicians are saying, well, we can't do this.
I feel like there's a way to adjust that, or at least start the fix on stuff like that.
Like what? I mean, what fix what?
Lawmakers and politicians.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think what it comes down to, it's kind of like this, take like restaurants, for example. I've always thought that managers at a restaurant that tell the servers and everything once a month should take a serving shift and do it themselves. So with that kind of theory, feel like politicians and lawmakers who decide what law enforcement can and can't use, what type of force they can and can't use, and stuff like that. Almost every 6 months they should do like 3 or 4 nights of a ride along, and maybe they have to join in on 2 days and 2 night shifts or something like that, or at least a few days where they have to boots on the ground, commit to watching what happens and be physically there. Because I don't think unless you are physically there or you see it, can you make a decision or a definitive statement on what people should and shouldn't be doing or how they should use their force until you actually get a general, like, is it consensus or census? I always get that one wrong. Consensus of officers and what they say and what they think would work best.
Well, they typically have that. They
do
typically
they?
have, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's what
then who's making the decisions?
Politicians.
Yeah, so why wouldn't they be for like hey, you wear this vest. You're gonna need to be gone through firearms training. You're gonna, if you kind of like how I've always said, I think if you're gonna be, the one thing I wish that they would put into the requirements for it to be a president is you got to have at least 4 years in some sort of branch, Coast Guard, you know, whatever. Because if you're gonna be the commander,
that would never happen.
Right, but doesn't it make sense? If you're gonna be the commander in chief, shouldn't you at least know a little bit of the workings from the inside?
Yeah, but I don't know how you would ever enforce that. You know, it just it would be nice because it used to be virtually all presidents had served somehow. It gets back to where I think everybody should give the country at least 2 years of some service.
Yeah,
whether it's military or whatever, Peace Corps or whatever, but some obligation that would require them to be a part and having blood in the game, like we talked about. You know, having some skin in the game of America.
Yeah, because I just, it's difficult for anybody to judge anything without really having some hands-on experience.
That's right, and that gets back to being naive.
Yeah.
They say, "Oh, this is what I like." You know, it's got pretty rainbows and pink unicorns, and I hope everybody's just going to be nice because we're going to let them riot for 2 or 3 days and then get it out of their system.
Right.
Well, it's 91 days now. Yeah. How's that working out? And the mayor had to leave because they were attacking him in his
at their homes,
at his condo.
Oh well, a few mayors were, they had flipped their stance 180 degrees as soon as they started marching down their streets.
Yeah. Well, they say the difference between a liberal and a conservative is a mugging.
Jesus. Well, I don't know. I hope that by the time my kids are that age to decide that this stuff is maybe figured its way out. I see a lot of the body cams are actually, they seem to be in the long run
good for a cop. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're starting to get their day in court and go, nope, look. Yeah. I mean, there's more details being released, but it's later. The only problem is releasing the bullshit first and letting the mass just.
Yeah, because that's what they hear.
Yeah.
It's like the apologies on, page 12, at the end of the paper.
I watched a video of this one guy. He was a reverend of some sort and I'm pretty sure he was a liberal, but was always on the cops about, and he was black, and he was always on the cops about shooting in the black neighborhoods and this and that and what they go through, and they need to be using less lethal force. And to your point, one of the things that you were talking about was tasers, and that it can cause them to have heart attacks, and
seizures.
So officers put him through training, and they give him the taser, and they said only use it if you feel necessary, because the guy said there's so many different ways you can you can handle yourself, and one of them was like, just keep backing away. It was so stupid. It was just a stupid thing. And they put a guy and they said, take him to the ground. If you get your hands on him, take him to the ground. And talking about the reverend, and it took him, I think, 13 seconds before he pulled the taser and shot it.
Yeah, when that reality checks in, it's a tough pitch to swallow.
That's it's fight or flight. And when you're dealing as an officer with split second to millisecond decisions. That's what's frustrating is then there's people that review it and analyze it, and they sit back with all the time in the world to review and analyze that, and then you get judged for it.
Yeah. Well,
it's not an easy job.
No, it's not. And if you look at what's happened here these last few months, homicides in New York are up almost 200%. I think it's some amazing percentage. And why? Because the cops are saying, I'm not going to go out there and put my ass on the line and then get criticized by everyone, including the people I work with. There's something known as implied immunity for cops. And they're starting to take that away. And what the implied immunity is that if a cop goes out, let's say he makes a mistake and he shoots somebody, it's dark, whatever it is, he makes a mistake.
It's a mistake.
It's a mistake.
It's an accident.
That's right. He's not going to go to jail for it, but the government's going to give him
reprimand.
They're taking that away. So not only are you put in very stressful, uncomfortable situations that nobody really has an answer to because they're all different, but not only are you put in that situation, they take away your tools to control that situation, and you may have to make a split-second decision that turns out to be wrong. So then what happens? Not only do you get fired, you get sued personally,
and then thrown in possible jail time or prison time
because there's no more implied immunity. That's why
there's no room for error.
Don't let your kid. Why would anybody put that in for $100,000 a year?
Well,
why would anybody put themselves?
That's not.
In that
but
position?
It's not just. I mean, that's all state to state too. Other states.
That's true. But I'm just talking about what I see. And
so the difference then for you, and the reason you didn't pull out from being an officer going through the 60s would have been because you had not only the implied immunity, but you had the department backing you up. And
I never thought about implied immunity, but yeah, they backed you up.
You guys were a unit.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you screwed up, they'd say, okay, well, you get 10 days off and think about it next time, but you never have to worry about it. But
the shitty thing now is one bad apple, and everybody has bad apples. Every fucking you have a restaurant, you have a grocery store, you have whatever, you have a bad apple working for you. They sneak in, and but with officers, the one bad apple today, and I'm just talking about today, it taints the water for every other officer, and that's what sucks. It really sucks for the other officers that really want to do well and it sucks because it what other job do you punch in and just, even if it's a slight thought, I might not come home tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have that opportunity every single time you go to work. That's the job. That's day one. That's hour one is I might not come back from this watch.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't know of anybody that really thought that way.
Maybe.
It's like any other job. Now what'll happen is you get put in a situation that could be really tricky. There's certain things that you do in order to make sure you do come home. But nobody goes to work, punches in and says, "Oh, I hope this isn't my last day."
Oh, no. I don't mean like they're saying it. I'm just mean like that is a possibility.
Sure.
It's not that possible if you're a lawyer. You're not going into a.
You haven't met a lawyer?
That's true.
Yeah.
But if you're not going into a law firm where everybody's
no, I know.
shooting back at you.
Yeah. No, I know.
That is just in itself. It's just again a sacrifice to be an officer. You're putting a lot out there.
Well, guys don't do it for the money, and they don't do it. They do it because they like the job. They love the job, and if they are in it for any other reason, then it's the wrong job because they're not going to last, and something's going to happen.
Especially now.
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah.
And everything that I'm saying, it's now.
Yeah.
Because way back when I was doing it, it was a whole different deal. But you did what you had to control the street, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but you just had to do what had to be done in order. It's compliance, and it's not like some overbearing prick. But if you ask somebody to do something on the street, there's a reason. maybe a wrong reason. Maybe you think this person is doing something, or comply. Do whatever the cop tells you to do. That's not the time to argue. The time to argue is later, when you're still alive. And it's just, but now with the politics the way they are, and everyone is, you stop somebody. Well, the only reason you stop me is because I'm Portuguese, or I'm driving a shitty car,
Oh, I know.
or whatever. No, I stopped you, asshole, because you went through the red light.
Right.
It's not
because your tags are 2 years out of date. Because whatever the reason. Yeah.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with who you are.
Right.
Because everybody says, well, profiling. Well, let me tell you. Here's how profiling works. With CHP, for one thing. You see a car going down a roadway, and you go to stop it for whatever reason, what violation, tag, speed, whatever. You have no idea what color the guy is in the car.
Mm-hmm.
No idea. You can't tell when a guy's going 65 miles an hour and he's a quarter of a mile ahead of you. I mean,
it's a victim
do you have
card.
superpowers?
No, it's just a victim card.
Absolutely. Oh, you stopped me because I'm black.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know you're black until about 3 seconds ago. It's just crap. It's just total bullshit. And profiling, let me tell you what profiling. Again, if you see a white group of teenagers in a part of the city that is slummish, low income, lots of crime, prostitutes, something like that. You see a carload of white kids in there. You're going to stop them. The reason you're going to stop them is it's a little unusual.
Yeah, it's out of place.
Yeah, it's out of place. And you're always looking for something out of place.
Right.
And so you stop them because they're not going to their soccer game. And you stop and see what they're doing. I mean, that's what good police is. You see a black guy driving through Beverly Hills. I got to be careful here, but driving through Beverly Hills in an old ratty car, and he's going up and down the streets.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to stop him,
right?
Because it's unusual. And that doesn't mean you're going to roust him. You say, let me see your driver's license, and are you lost? Do you need help? Whatever it is. But you look for something
that's out of place.
Out of place.
Yeah.
That's
doesn't
profiling.
belong.
That's profiling.
Yeah.
But it's not necessary. It's profiling is good police work.
Yeah.
Because it's like my partner Dave with that. He saw a cigarette going from the front seat to the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
He profiled it. It's unusual.
My whole thing would be, like, did you guys do anything wrong? Then relax, and this will be over.
Yeah, right.
We're just doing our job.
Absolutely.
But for like what you said, is everybody plays this victim card, and it's getting aggravating for me at least. But because I don't want my kids to be taught that either, to play this little victim bullshit. It's but it's a different era too. Everybody's got their phones out and cameras, and it's like one of my favorite stories you always have said is when you got served papers by the other officer, your ex's
boyfriend.
Yeah. You couldn't do that today. What you did. So you
I could.
You could, but you'd be fired right away.
I'm not so
sure. With body cams?
I'm not so sure.
Really?
Yeah. Because I think it would work. Because that was kind of a particular situation. But
well, where did he serve you? You were both in uniform, right?
I was going. I was going through my divorce, and I worked in San Francisco. I lived in Pacifica, and I was working the day shift, so I would go in early in the morning. And my ex-wife, she would take me back to court every time she could for whatever reason. She was driving me nuts. So I was doing a very stellar job of avoiding the subpoena that she had out for me. And she was dating a Pacifica cop at the time. And I was driving down Lindemar Boulevard early in the morning. It was dark, and it was kind of foggy out, how it gets down there. And I turned from Lindemar Boulevard onto Highway 1 going north. And I'm in my car. I'm in my full uniform. And all of a sudden, the world lights up red. And so I pull over. Didn't know what I did, but it was a Pacifica cop, pulls me over. And he walks up to the car. I have my window down. And he takes this subpoena that my ex-wife's trying to serve me, sails it in my window and says, "Greetings, AJ." And I had no idea what it was, you know. So I turn on the dome light of my car and I'm looking at it. It's this freaking subpoena. I was pissed.
I bet.
So I got out of my car, and he had just gotten into his car. I get out of my car. I go back to his patrol car, and I wanted to know who this guy was because I didn't know. So his window was down the driver's side. I reached through the window, grabbed him by the lapels, pulled him up to the window, his face smashed against the headliner because I wanted to see his badge number, his name, you know. And I looked at it and I saw it was the guy she was dating. And so I threw his ass back in the car, and I threw him back in there. I said, "Okay," I said, "2 of us can play this game, asshole." And so we had a little feud going on between the CHP and Pacifica PD for a while.
Oh,
because what happened, I went into roll call, and I waited for the commander of the San Francisco CHP, and I went in and told him what happened. And he was pissed. And so he picks up the phone, and he gets a hold of the chief of police in Pacifica, and he told him what happened. And he says, "If you guys want to play that game," he says, "I will flood that podunk town of yours with so many CHP units, you won't be able to turn around without getting cited." And so it turns out that the guy that served in the subpoena got several days off for
Nice.
that. Yeah. But it was a different time. But see, let's say we had the cameras.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently I thought you had hit him or something. But,
no.
Yeah. It's just, but there's no taking your licks anymore. You know?
Taking what?
Your licks anymore. There's no everybody wants to come back with a bigger stick, you know, when you're not looking type of deal. And you say this a lot, street justice went both ways. You know, and that's what I think a lot of people are missing is, hey, you know, so what? You got your ass whooped and that's it. I don't know, but you can't do that without anybody crying anymore about it. Wanting.
Well, there is a right and a wrong, but there's also a right and a wrong way to handle each situation. So these unarmed guys that got shot, they did it the wrong way. You know, if they had just complied, it wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm. So the only change is getting people to recognize that, you know, hey, compliance first. You know,
Absolutely.
And if there's compliance
and
then
years
this
later,
happens,
yeah,
then we have an issue.
Absolutely. I mean, what? Let's take this last shooting where the cop shot him 7 times in the back.
The Jacob kid?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Is it Blake?
Yeah.
What was the cop supposed to do? The guy was bigger, tougher, faster because he kept walking away from the cop, went into the car, started reaching under his seat. Somebody said something about a knife. I don't know all that. But okay, let's just say, what's the cop supposed to do at that point? Seriously, tell me.
Don't know. I don't know. Like that's what I think the argument there would be taser, but then you go to that.
And
and taser doesn't always work.
No, but what is this cop supposed to? I'm not suggesting that shooting him was the right thing to do, but give me an alternative.
There is no alternative that's anything other than violence.
It is violence. You got to do it,
yeah.
And that's what happens in the street. It is a violent place.
Yes,
but tell me what the cop was supposed to do.
Use violence. That's the only way. Truly. And
okay, but let's say he goes to grab the guy. Well, he can't use the chokehold anymore. Right. So he can't go for the head to get him out of the car.
Right.
And typically when you want to move somebody from point A to point B, you use their head because wherever the head goes, the body follows.
Yeah.
You know? So these people that are saying, "Oh, well, give me an alternative." The only alternative in their mind is you either
let him go,
walk away. Just walk away.
What the fuck?
Well, okay, so you do that because this is what these people want.
And then he goes out and he murders.
Who knows?
Yeah. So then who's liable?
He did have a knife under there, and he was.
So one of the best Cops episodes I ever saw was like one of the first seasons, and it's very similar to that situation. And they respond to a call of a lady trying to leave in her vehicle, and she's in the van, and she rams the cop car that's pulling up, and it's from his dash cam, and they go to pull her out of the vehicle. She's reaching like this, and they have her door open, and they go into trying to cut, I think, her seatbelt, and she undoes her seatbelt and comes out with a kitchen knife, and literally swings at the officer. That officer jumps back. She doesn't realize there's another officer on the other side of the van, and he runs around, spear tackles her. And it's on YouTube. Spear tackles her in the back, and she goes like this with the knife, and it all the way up to the handle.
Yeah.
So if that happened today, apparently that's not allowed, because they would say you needed to take her down other way. And back to your point. So what's the answer then? There is no other answer.
Exactly.
There's no fucking answer that doesn't end with violence.
Yeah, there's a reason why England's starting to give bobbies guns now, because there's
they need it.
Yeah. But and then I always hear this too. Well, they shot him 7 times. Now let's take this one particular case out of the. Okay, I'm not talking about that. But say, wow, he put 15 rounds in that guy. Wow, he put 7 rounds in that guy. Why does that matter?
He had to pull the trigger.
No, yeah, why does it matter? If you make the decision that you got to shoot this guy, what does it matter whether it's 1 or 12? Seriously. What you want to do is neutralize the
threat.
The threat.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't matter how many shots. Once you are in a position where you're comfortable making that decision, what difference does it make if it's, and you hear these idiots say, well, shoot the gun out of his hand, or shoot him in the leg.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, right. If people were that good a shot.
Of marksman?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're not talking Annie Oakley here.
Right, this isn't James Bond.
Yeah. Well, James Bond,
well,
he does it right.
It has to end in violence, because you're dealing with violence. And that's what I mean by that job. I'm sure you've seen that one thing where it's like, you think the cop was just being a dick to you. Yeah, the cop pulled you over for running that stop sign, because the last time he was there, he scraped up a kid off the ground there for somebody that ran that stop sign. Yeah. So he's being a dick because of experiences, or there's or if that's what it is, but it's their daily. The message there is their daily is that their daily is stopping either scumbags or whatever. Or I talked about this with my buddy. The 39 kids that were found in Georgia. I don't know if I could be an officer. It would be without being dirty, because I would want to take them out back and line them up, all 9 of them.
Yeah.
How do you not?
Yeah.
And my buddy was his point, because he's a correctional officer. He says, when you put that badge on, you swear an oath.
Yeah.
And
it's tough. Yeah.
But you take that home. How do you not take that home if you're an officer? How do you not take home those 39 children?
Well,
in your head.
Sometimes you do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes. I mean, I still think of things that I've seen that, I won't say haunts me, but, will never go away.
You can't unsee.
No, I can't unsee it. Yeah.
And I think there needs to be understanding with that before any other decisions are made, telling officers what they need to be doing or deciding on doing.
Well, I think that my test of a situation is if somebody's sitting there telling you that you shouldn't have done that, we'll say, okay, what should I have done?
Mm-hmm.
And if they can't come up with a viable, well, then that's my position on the street, except I was under threat. And you sit in here in an air-conditioned office, we're sipping lattes, and you think that I should have done something different. Well, tell me what that might be. I'd love to know. Because,
it's a good point.
I'm 5'10", and if you got some guy that's 6'8" and just left Gold's Gym, and I know that, in fact, I had to arrest a guy. He was trying to steal my CHP motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, he had just gotten out of San Quentin, and he was trying to make his bones by stealing a CHP bike. And he was a big son of a bitch. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, when I got him, I put my gun in the back of his head, and I told him, I said, you one big motherfucker. You can kick my ass. So you move, I'm going to kill you. And he didn't move. But I knew he could.
That's back to what we were saying with those people that analyze your moves when you have to pull your service weapon, when you have to. Why do they? Do they ever go on ride-alongs? Do they ever do watches? Because they should.
Yeah, I would imagine some of them do. They got police review boards that
I
are
think
civilian.
they should be mandatory.
Maybe they are. I mean, I don't know. But, I think every shooting and all that has to be evaluated, has to be looked at.
Oh, yeah.
And say, okay, what's the motivation? Because motivation, and what was his state of mind? And, you look at all those things. And if a guy's wrong, he's wrong. But
how do you
fire him?
How do you do it without the influence of public opinion?
When? At what point in the incident? You don't worry about public opinion when you're on the street. You're just trying to get through it.
I get it. I'm saying when people evaluate these officers, that should have a little bit more leeway with their decisions, and they're being so critical.
That's why the cops have implied immunity, which they're taking away.
Right.
Which is a whole nother layer of complications. So you want to be a cop for $100,000 and put your family and your life and everything. This last shooting, guy's going to jail.
He's not gonna.
He didn't get up. There. He didn't get up that morning and say, "Hey, I'm going to go out and kill somebody."
Right.
And if I can put 7 shots in instead of 6, I'm going to do that today. I wonder who it'll be. No, he went out there doing his job. Probably just came back from lunch, and then all of a sudden he's put in this position. You can't expect. Yeah, maybe it's the wrong decision, but okay. That's the way it goes. Sometimes it's a wrong decision. But 2 things. One, you got to cover the cop's ass somehow. I mean, unless it was blatant. And the other thing is, if a cop tells you to do something, do it. It takes away all of these issues. You can't give me an example, maybe somebody can, but of where a cop did something because the guy did what the cop told him to do.
Yeah.
It's very simple. But because of the mindset of the people now and all the political correctness and all the victimhood and all that stuff, you tell somebody to do something, their first instinct is to basically say, fuck you, you can't tell me that.
Right,
okay,
right.
Then it goes to the next level. And I say, well, yeah, I can tell you that. And put your hands on the car. I ain't putting my hands, okay? Where does it end? It ends, somebody's going to get hurt. Either the cop or the guy that's not complying.
It's a weird time. It's we're already in like this brink of civil war. You've got people strapping up and like that kid.
Look at that kid that came in from out of town with that AR-15.
I get it. I get that. I get that there's laws that he broke by crossing state lines, by all. But I also understand, like,
he shouldn't have been there.
No, he shouldn't have been. But when you feel like you need to do something that nobody else is going to do, that's almost how this country was founded.
Yeah, but that kid should not have been there.
I get it. I understand.
That
but
was the wrong thing, wrong decision. But he's 17 years old.
Right.
His brain isn't fully developed until he's 25. And he's got a, AR-15 with him.
No,
he shouldn't have been there.
I watched the video. I watched the full video, and there was a lot of mistakes with his training. If he had,
he has no training.
And somebody was saying he had training. I was like, how do you run?
What kind of training does a 17-year-old kid have?
Right.
He might have been at the range and could, hit a Coke can or something.
No.
But he made a bad decision, and he's paying for it. Now they're saying, well, you look at this and it looks like self-defense because a guy tried to grab his gun. Fine. Okay, that's fine. He shouldn't have put himself in that position. Yeah. And that was totally wrong decision.
Yeah, that's going to be the blowback on most of these departments are like New York is their retirement rate's up 200-something%.
People are quitting. They're retiring early. They can't hire new guys. And why? Because of all the things we've been talking about.
And there's wives at home that have husbands that are officers, and probably husbands that have wives of officers that are like, you can probably make the same amount of money, doing X job or Y job,
And it's a hell of a lot easier.
And you don't have to worry about anything. Well,
okay.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up. San Francisco. I'm glad you guys experienced it.
Driver, finish the tour. Let's get the hell out of here. Okay, talk to
Thank you all for tuning in. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And until next time, cheers, everyone. And stay sane out there.